Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with episode 3, season number 2 of the Jungle Roar podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing and listening, all of you loyal listeners and viewers out there. It is my pleasure to welcome back, unfortunately, via Zoom this time, but great to have him back on the show, the one and only James Rapien of allbengals.com. Does a great job following the Cincinnati Bengals and all things NFL related to the stripes for SI.com. And of course, he is on the only daily podcast covering the Bengals. That would be, of course, the Locked On podcast. How you doing, James?
I'm doing well. I thought you were going to unfortunately welcome me onto the podcast or back to the podcast. I was about to laugh at you.
So
and then,
you know why
you were too polite. You were too polite there.
No, I appreciate you joining us. I just have gotten used to seeing you in person and doing those stand-ups, which do very well, by the way. I've noticed the numbers, and people like to see us together on location at a spot. Have you noticed that?
I think it's, you know why? I think it's because you can only, or we both look good, but we're in separate areas. So when we get together, it's just too much for one area. And so you can only do it so often. But yeah, I'm excited that people watch those stand-ups. That's it's a good thing. I complimented you just now. I said you look good. Starting off on a good foot here.
I appreciate that, James. Well, you know what? Speaking of good feet, the Bengals have acquired themselves 3 sets of good feet along the offensive line. You see what I did there? Capped off by the 3-year deal, 2 years, really, when it comes down to it, for La'el Collins of the Dallas Cowboys. The Bengals sign him. It is a deal estimated, according to Adam Schefter of ESPN, worth around $20 to $22 million. There's a 3rd year to prorated to help the Bengals with their cap that would crank it up to about $30 million, or just over $30 million. That is money well spent in my mind, especially after what they did in adding Ted Karras and Alex Cappa.
I love it. I love what they did to adjust the offensive line. They have 4 entrenched starters, all guys that should be entering their prime or in the heart of their prime. And they had to go out and they had to spend, and they spent on guard from the jump. And I wasn't anticipating Alex Cappa being that guy at 12:01 last Monday, and he was. And they were able to get Karras, a guy you covered in New England, and 2 guys that can pass block their tails off when they need to in a drop back situation. And then when you add La'el Collins, who, man, I need to get used to it. La'el Collins. I've been saying it wrong.
Anyway, when you add, if you're going to pronounce his entire name, he gave us a tutorial on Wednesday during a Zoom call, and it was Dan Horde who asked him up front, straight out, how do you pronounce your first name? La'el. But then he went on to say, I'm cool with just being called LC, or I've heard a few other nicknames, Bodyguard. And he's aware of, obviously that he was memed to death after he said, I'm Joe Burrow's new bodyguard. Nobody's going to touch you. But anyway, it's La'el Collins, according to
La'el Collins. So yeah, I'm going to have to get that down here as we move forward. That being said, he was the main course and he came a week in. He's the best of the group. He's the best lineman that they have in that building now. Instantly comes in and is their best right tackle, with all due respect to Andre Smith, since Willie Anderson. And so it's a huge upgrade, and it's exciting because they have all of these pieces that seem like once in a generation like pieces. And so the fact that they were able to add the offensive line help that they needed, it's huge going into the draft, where maybe they'll bolster the trenches a bit more.
Well, I thought it was interesting on Wednesday that Zach Taylor was asked about what his realistic expectations were. I think Kelsey Conway of the Cincinnati Enquirer asked this. And when you take a look at the talent that's been added, and Zach Taylor acknowledged that I think going in, we expected 2, and we would have been happy with the 2 that we got in obviously Karras and Cappa. But then they weren't necessarily guaranteed that Dallas was going to release them. And the fact that the Bengals were able to wait long enough, play the game perfectly, patiently and wait on the Cowboys to release him, then go out and sign him to really, I still think, a team-friendly deal. 3 years and even $30 million. That's not a terrible deal. You look at the way the Bengals played it, it was perfect. And I saw this on Twitter and somebody tweeted it out, and I think it's a great point, even if the numbers aren't exactly this. They were able to sign Cappa, Karras, and Collins for the same value of Terron Armstead.
Yep.
I mean, that's a great job by Duke Tobin and Katie Blackburn and Troy Blackburn. They all aced the exam as far as I'm concerned to this point.
For sure. And look, they weren't just one piece away from fixing the line, and they knew that. And really what they had to do is in free agency is find a way to make up ground for bad draft pick after bad draft pick after bad draft pick on the offensive line, because that's what happens when you have guys like that you're starting a 6th rounder in Akeem Adeniji at right guard. You're starting Isaiah Prince, and I get it. It's because Riley Reif was injured, but that's still...
Somebody has an opinion on La'el Collins and the rest of the offensive line. How's he doing, by the way?
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Oh, anyways, that's quite all right. Continue, James.
I mean, he's good. He's my bodyguard. See, if anyone gets within 100 feet of my house, he's got to bark like that and try to sound really ferocious. So don't get near Rapien Mansion. But yeah, I mean, that's what they were basically having to do. This team was ahead of schedule, essentially. And now they realized, oh man, we have a win now quarterback, win now weapons. We need a win now offensive line. We even have a win now coach. They feel that way right now, which we couldn't have said a year ago. And so they had to go out and they had to spend money to address the problem, but they had to smartly spend money. And I think, to your point, that's what they were able to do by adding 3 quality in their prime offensive linemen that are versatile, specifically in Karras' case. And I really like him because of that versatility.
I love Ted Karras. And, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, I did cover him in New England. And the thing about Karras is he's a very quiet leader, and he's a very prepared offensive lineman, and he falls back on his technique quite a bit. And that's no surprise given the fact that he was tutored by the great Dante Scarnecchia, somebody who is incredibly well regarded around the National Football League. Obviously, even Frank Pollock recognized that last Friday when he spoke about Karras and Cappa coming on board. He said that I'm going to pick Ted Karras's brain and find out how Dante taught the offensive line there, because how can you not take advantage of that opportunity, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's the thing is, Pollock was such a key to everything. And look, the offensive line was awful last season, but he didn't have talent. You can only coach up these guys so much. And so when you have a guy like that, obviously it helped with the La'el Collins. I know La'el. I just did a video, 8 minutes on La'el Collins, and I got it right every time. I come on this pod and you're rubbing off on me, Trags, with your mispronunciations, even though you actually got it right and I didn't. That being said,
which is a once in a million occurrence, but continue.
He's a big factor, right? He was a big factor in adding Collins, but I think it matters with guys like Cappa and guys like Karras, because you don't want to go to a place and that's it. You're stop learning and you're not being coached hard and you're not growing and you're not moving in the right direction as a player, because heck, in Cappa's case, he's only going to be 30, 31 and hit free agency again. Karras, 3-year deal. He's going to still probably sign another contract at some point. So you always want to keep improving. So having a good offensive line coach with the reputation that Pollock has across the league, that matters when, guess what? You're going after offensive linemen and you're trying to get guys to buy into what you're doing.
The other thing I want to bring up is Joe Burrow's role in all of this. And as we were losing our collective minds on whether or not the Collins deal was going to get done heading into last weekend, and I see you smiling and laughing, and you know exactly why, we all were. We were all wondering if this was going to fall through at the last second and just be a big time disappointment. Joe Burrow played a huge role in this, and La'el Collins, LC, acknowledged as much in his Zoom call with us on Wednesday that Joe Burrow was the final stamp of approval. He was really what it convinced him that this was a done deal. The way Burrow was involved, the leadership he showed in having guys over to his house, and the fact that there is a win now mentality throughout the organization.
Yep. Yeah. That's it changes everything. It changes everything when you have a guy like that that's willing to open up his home to guys that he doesn't know. I mean, let's be honest here. He knew Colin some from the LSU ties they had met before because of the national championship and stuff like that. But he doesn't know these guys that well. And it's like, yeah, hey, we just had dinner. Let's go over to my house and let's hang out. And it's huge. It can make all the difference in the world, especially for a franchise like the Bengals.
Yep. That
is in the Midwest and isn't a top 5 market or isn't going to be beachy every single day. The Saturday where La'el Collins was going back and forth and he was bouncing around the mall, it was rainy. It was dreary. It wasn't the best weather. And so, that becomes a little bit of a harder sell. Hey, leave Dallas and not that it's awesome there all the time, but leave that area, that part of the country and come to this Midwestern town. And it's not just Collins. I'm just saying in general, when you're trying to land guys like this. And so the fact that you have a quarterback that talented, that's also willing to lead on and then off the field, away from the facility in recruiting, I think it's huge. And I think the Bengals have done a good job of taking advantage of that over the past couple of years to land some of these guys that they have.
Felt like I was at my little brother's house. It was just authentic. It was real. It was pure. That really stamped it, put it over the top. Those words from Collins on Wednesday on his visit to Joe Burrow's house.
Good question, James. Can't believe you asked it.
That was a great question, James. And I was going to give you credit. I was going to get around to that, but okay. You just put it out there. You stole my own thunder on my own podcast. Way to go. Mm-hmm. But anyway, no, James, you asked the question. It got right to the heart of the matter, and on Joe Burrow being a leader there. And I think Collins gives you some insight as to what he feels about Cincinnati now, what he feels about Joe Burrow. He also, I thought, gave some very well thought out reflections, if you will, on his time in Dallas. He had nothing but love for the Dallas Cowboys on Wednesday when he spoke about his former employer. He didn't, he didn't burn any bridges heading out of Dallas. That organization, there's no animosity. It's all love. Collins said he appreciated the opportunity that Dallas gave him in his first 7 seasons. And if you thought that Dallas fans were going to be able to, fire some ammunition his way and hurt his feelings, that just wasn't the case on Wednesday.
No, it's extremely mature is what I would say, is how he seems to have handled all of this. And I know there were some character questions and there's things like that. It seems like he's ready for that next phase of his career. Didn't take a shot at the Cowboys, didn't say, that he said, look, you have to respond to adversity. And he's dealt with some adversity. The suspension last year, missed all of 2020. So I thought he handled the questions, including the Cowboys one, because he could have said, man, They shouldn't have cut me. You know what they should have done? Not sign Zeke Elliott to a ridiculous contract, because that's why they cut him. Let's be honest here. They wanted to save some cap space in some cap room this year. And so they had to go that route. They're not better without La'el Collins. They're not, even though they like the young kid in Dallas, they're not better with him, without him. So, it was good that he took the high road.
It was certainly a different tack than somebody we're going to, let's just get to Hayden Hurst now. Hayden Hurst didn't exactly have that same approach with regard to the Ravens and Falcons, did he? He did not.
I was just given an opportunity. Yeah. Oh my God. It was a complete 180.
It was
he crushed
opening, James.
He's the 25th pick in the 2018 draft, spent 2 years in Baltimore, then 2 years in Atlanta. And I admit it, you look on the surface, Mark Andrews emerges and you're catching passes from Lamar Jackson in what is really a run heavy offense your first couple of years. You get traded to Atlanta, you have a career year, and then they draft Kyle Pitts. And this dude's just like, here's what I would say about about it, Trags, because I do like Hurst, and I think he fits a lot of what they'll do. And, I'm not going to say anything new necessarily there. We can get into that. I also don't like in my life, and I'm not saying he's this, but what he did in that opening news conference could mean this. I do not want people around me that are woe is me. Oh man, it's just never goes my way. I don't want it. And so I hope that's not it. And I'm not saying it is.
No, agreed.
But my God,
1,000% agree with you.
Great people and great players emerge regardless of the situation, at least to a degree. They pop regardless. And if you're a first round pick, you got to pop regardless. So I think this is Hayden Hurst. It's his last chance to really show that he can be this tight end 125th overall pick type of guy that he was drafted to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Going back to LC, I hearken back to the days in New England where you would take a player who had questionable character issues, questionable, not over the edge, like, you rule him out right, like Ray Rice, for instance. That's an extreme example, but even the Patriots knew we're not touching Ray Rice. But there were other players who had suspension issues, had obviously stubbed their toes with regard to personal conduct in the past, but the Patriots got them in the environment where there were clearly defined leaders that would say to the player, we're going to give you an opportunity here. I don't know if Burrow would say this necessarily. You better not screw it up. But essentially the message is you better not screw it up because we're here to win and we want to bring you into our family. Don't make us regret that. And I think the Bengals are moving towards that. And to me, James, that is a seismic shift in the character and the culture around the Bengals. And Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin have a lot of credit, should take a lot of credit for that.
They certainly deserve a lot of credit for that because Zach Taylor, let's start with him. When we go to the Hayden Hurst part of this, a guy who clearly doesn't trust coaches, doesn't trust front offices. And a lot of that is probably true. And he's probably just in what he's thinking. Talked about Zach Taylor praising how genuine he is, how honest he was, how upfront he was about the role that they envisioned for him. And I think that led to part of why Hayden Hurst was so forthcoming and honest about everything else. Cause he's like, man, I'm finally in this place. I can be honest about this BS that I've dealt with. And that's the thing. It might be that. And I think Zach is genuine. He's easy to root for. And I'm not saying he's perfect because a year ago before this run, I was like, I probably would have moved on. 625-1's hard to overcome. It appears he's overcame that. And on the overall culture aspect of it, all of that only gets better and will get better if they continue to win, right? Because if they continue to win, you're right. It's like, all right, I got to go there and I got to show what I can do. And guess what? A lot of free agents have come through the Paul Brown Stadium doors over the past couple of years and done what? Had success. From Trey Flowers, a guy that they claim mid-season, right? To guys like Von Bell, to guys like DJ Reader and Trey Hendricks and all these different guys. Mike Hilton, even a Mike Thomas has been here now, signed for a third year, the wide receiver. So, there's a blueprint now. And if I'm a veteran, obviously they're a contender, but you look and you're like, man, that's a good landing spot. Like if I'm Hayden Hurst, of course I want to go catch passes from Joe Burrow. And especially if I'm going to get an opportunity to start, that makes all the sense in the world. And so I think that's where the Burrow effect can come in. And this culture effect is now when we're talking about these veteran guys that aren't going to command big money and they want to join a contender. Maybe it's the Bengals this year. Maybe it's next year if they have another big 2022 season.
Because it's been the off season of the AFC quarterback and a lot of teams can't even believe I'm saying this, but are kind of in a way playing catch up to the Bengals. They want to be what the Bengals showed that they could be this past season. They are trying to match Joe Burrow. And what did you make of the Kansas City Chiefs trading six-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins for 5 draft picks, a 2022 first rounder, a second rounder, a fourth rounder, plus 4th and 6th round picks in the 2023 draft. And then the Dolphins turn around and give him Tyreek Hill, a 4-year, $120 million extension. What do you make of that?
Well, it's good for the Bengals in a huge way, because you can't convince me the Chiefs are going to be a better team in 2022 without Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
You can give me the blueprint of, oh, they sign Odell, or, oh, they draft this receiver, or, oh, they do this, and they have 4 picks in the top 60, blah, 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 blah. It's Tyreek Hill. All right. And when freaks, they don't grow on trees. And when you give up a freak, it's hard to replace that freak with another one. And so that's the first part of it is, I think, all right, well, the team that gave the Bengals all they could handle in the AFC title game, and the Bengals had to go there and win at Arrowhead. Well, they got a little weaker today. And who knows? Maybe they do replace Tyreek Hill and it's all sunshine and roses and they're doing TikTok dances with Juju Smith-Schuster and coming. Who knows? But I think they're worse off without Hill. That being said, they got a bounty, a bundle of draft picks. They get rid of a sketchy character in Tyreek Hill. I think that's fair to say. And then if you're Miami, the Bengals play Miami. They host Miami at Paul Brown Stadium in 2022. So you have to deal with him anyways. But man, that's a lot of pressure on a first-year head coach. He's trying to get Tua right. And now, and it's good. You want to give your young quarterback weapons. I just wonder, Tyreek Hill, does it fit? And I know a lot of people were asking that. And as I've broken it down, it happened, an hour ago or so. But as I've thought about it, here's why it does fit. Because Tyreek Hill isn't just go routes. This dude runs screens, slants. You can hand the ball off to him. And so if you got a guy like Mike McDaniel, and, at head coach, who's this offensive innovator who just understands scheme and X's and O's, and you have Jalen Waddle on one side, Tyreek Hill on the other, assuming Mike Gesicki stays there, Mike Gesicki at tight end, that's a hell of a trio. And, they could be a lot of fun to watch. So I like this move for both sides. It is a lot to give up, though, if you're Miami. And so that's part of it. But if Tyreek Hill is the Tyreek Hill that we know for the next 3 years, then it's probably worth it, because game changers, like I said, they don't grow on trees.
The Jets were in on this deal, according to Adam Schefter, very heavy as well. And the Jets trade offer to Kansas City would have accepted the wide receiver had the wide receiver opted for New York. It did not include a first-round pick, but rather multiple picks that were commensurate to the Dolphins' offer based on the draft value charts, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the Jets fall short. The Dolphins get their man in Tyreek Hill. I find that, I don't know, interesting, but kind of bizarre from both ends. I don't like it from either end. I kind of disagree with you there, James. For the Dolphins, I just don't see how this really helps, like you said, a first-year coach trying to get Tua right. I think that's true, but I just don't think it helps them immediately. And that's a lot of dough to pay out, a lot of dough. But
and that's the other part of this is, the contracts that have been handed out last week and this week. Deshaun Watson fully guaranteed. Devontae Adams, his deal. Now Tyreek Hill's contract, highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. T. Higgins is on the clock after this year for an extension, extension eligible. Jamar Chase in a couple of years, who, especially in a couple of years, could be the best receiver on the planet, like trending in that direction. We could be talking about not only the greatest receiver in Bengals history, but one of the best to ever play. And I get it. I'm going off of just 1 year, but it's not just 1 year. He was great at 19 years old in the SEC. So that being said, the Bengals, well, they're going to have to get two things. One, get ready for that while also competing. And I think that's why you don't go after a Terran Armstead and you break it up and you find these quality pieces. But two, the way they're structuring deals where it's front loaded, they may have to change that a little bit. The guaranteed money they commit to, they are going to have to change that for Joe Burrow. So that's going to be the interesting thing is how this changes with Higgins, and not necessarily this order. Higgins, Burrow, Chase, these guys that Jesse Bates isn't on that level, but these guys certainly will be when they're extension eligible.
Hey, you surprised that Honey Badger has not signed anywhere yet? And do you think that could Tyrann Mathieu the fact that he hasn't signed could impact Jesse Bates?
Maybe if Jesse Bates had a different agent. That's where I keep coming back to, man, is I think David Mulligetta, he was bragging about Watson's deal and he's really good at his job, but I think he's that type of agent, right? That wants to say, I got my client top of the market safety money. And if you don't get that or get a certain amount guaranteed, but at the same time, the safety market isn't what he anticipated, I think. And so, yeah, if I'm Bates, I want to get a deal done, especially with Matthew out there. You're right. Matthew isn't even 30 yet. He's about to be. So yeah, he's one of my favorite players in the NFL, by the way. Hope he doesn't land in the AFC North. Go to Tampa Bay and play, with my guy TB12 or who knows, maybe come to Cincinnati. I would love to cover Tyrann Mathieu for a year.
Have we talked since Tom Brady announced that he was going to, and he wrecked the selection show. Since he announced that he was coming back, I don't think we've talked, have we, on our podcast?
We haven't. No, you're right. We haven't.
You know what this means?
He's back. He's back.
And assuming that the game is not in Germany, and I don't think it will be, the Bengals travel to Tampa Bay next year. Yeah. And it will be Joe Burrow against Tom Brady.
I'll be there.
Yeah. So
I might be in the front row. I might not be in the press box that day.
You'll be in the press box.
I might take off. I might send a proxy, and then you'll see me, with a 6. No, I'm just kidding. It will be fun though. I've never covered a Tom Brady game. That part would be fun, especially, Burrow versus Brady. They're both going to be psyched up for that.
I think Burrow against Brady in the Super Bowl this year would have been the highest rated Super Bowl ever. I really do believe that, had that happened.
I think you're right. No, I think you're right. And hell, if circumstances would have been a little different, they almost beat the Rams. They almost came back and completed that. And, it's kind of crazy to look at it, the way that the end of the season unfolded for Tampa Bay. But you look at the NFC, I think it's the Bucks, and I think it's the Rams. Everybody else is behind, including Aaron Rodgers, his 10 toes, and the Packers.
Anything else on your mind?
No, not really. It's winding down. We're about to go draft heavy here. And so, ready or not, man, I mean, this has been a grind. It feels really nonstop since late July. And it's a lot of fun. I'll say that. So hopefully we get through the draft and then have a couple months here. And then after that, we'll dive into camp and maybe go on another playoff run, because playoff runs are fun.
They are fun, James, and it makes all of the grinding worthwhile when you actually see these players out on the field performing to the level that they are expected to perform. And that's why the Bengals went out and acquired them. I think getting La'el Collins is really the final piece. And if the one thing you hope for is health. If these guys can stay healthy at the age they're at, the Bengals are markedly better along the front. Oh, one more quick question. The left guard position is the last position I think we have to really get set in stone for the Bengals. Jackson Carman's in that discussion. Who else do you think is on the roster now going to come up in that discussion?
Deontay Smith is firmly in that discussion, I think. I think he's a guy, they really liked him in camp, and he got dinged up and missed a preseason game, and then got injured during the year. It was one thing after another for Deontay Smith, but they like his arm length, they like his work ethic, which is important. It's really important. I think he has a chance to earn their trust quicker than a Jackson Carman. And so those are the two guys. And Adeniji will probably be in the mix as well, at least to a degree. But those are the two guys for me that in-house. And then they could address it in the draft. And I wouldn't be shocked if they brought back Quentin Spain on a 1-year type deal, veteran type deal where, hey, come compete, because you may end up starting. So I think they're going to do more there and address left guard. But it'll probably be one of those young guys that is starting in week 1.
He is James Rapien, does a fabulous job for allbengals.com, covering the Bengals for Sports Illustrated. Also, be sure to listen and subscribe to his podcast, the Locked On Bengals, the only daily podcast covering your Cincinnati Bengals. James, it's always been a pleasure having you on, and it will be in the future. I'm not talking just past tense here. We're talking the present and in the future. Follow you on Twitter at James Rapien, all one word, correct? That has not changed.
Nope, that has not changed, Mike. You're right.
All right. Well, he's James.
Thanks for
Rapien.
having me.
Anytime, you know that. I always love smooth transitions. Thanks, bud. He is James Rapien. I'm Mike Petralia, Trags. This has been the Jungle Roar podcast. We'll talk to you next time.